everyone to the JDC West 2016 marketing case presentation today, proudly presented by the Ministry of Agriculture. Thank you to our judges for being here with us. Shelley Lukasiewicz from CPA Saskatchewan, Kate Lockhart from MCO, Nick Kochar from Refresh, Alana Cook from the Government of Saskatchewan, Kim McConnell from AdFarm, Michael Hoffert from Farm Credit Canada, Tiffany Stevenson from the Ministry of Agriculture, and Mohammed Warshizi from the Department of Bioresource Policy, Business and Economics, and the College of Agriculture and Bioresources. Competitors will have a maximum of 20 minutes to present. Immediately following the presentation, judges will have a total of 5 minutes to ask the presenters questions. The volunteer timekeeper will show time cards at various intervals to indicate the remaining time and will stop any speaker who exceeds the maximum time limit. No questions, comments, cell phones, or picture taking will be permitted from the audience at any given time. The audience will only be permitted to applaud following the question and answer period. The audience is also banned from any material that bears the name or symbol of the competing university, and we ask that the audience exit the room immediately following the question and answer period. Competitors, you may begin when you're ready.
Good afternoon, good morning, I suppose, representatives of the Ministry of Agriculture. My name is Zach, these are my colleagues Blair and Mitch, and we're here on behalf of Mr. Hiller at Team B Consulting to provide you with the recommendations that we are confident is going to help change the landscape in the agriculture sector right now. So before entering this recommendation, we identified 2 key challenges. First, our primary challenge is that right now consumers lack education regarding the innovative technology in the agricultural sector. We need to make sure that consumers are aware that these innovations are in fact beneficial and are not something to be afraid of. And our secondary challenge here is that there's lack of awareness in regards to the employment opportunities in that agricultural sector. So we want to make sure that our recommendation addresses this by letting consumers and people in the in Canada, and Saskatchewan in particular, recognize that there are in fact opportunities for positions in the agricultural sector. Which leads us to our recommendation. Personal connections. So you wanted to focus on a marketing campaign that was going to leverage these connections and reach to these the consumers in Canada and Saskatchewan on a personal level. So you wanted to create profiles of people who work in this sector. So farmers, scientists, accountants, they represent so many of the many different positions that are available, and then they will give their own testimonials as to why there are so many benefits to utilizing this technology and these innovations. As you'll see further, we can delve into the implementation process of how we're going to go about doing this, but for now, this should give you a great idea of what exactly we plan to do. So on our agenda for today, we're just going to start us off with our analysis, our decision criteria, and some of the alternatives we considered when arriving at a recommendation. Next, Mitch will walk us through exactly how we plan to implement this marketing strategy. And lastly, I will follow up with our budget, our risks and contingency, and a nice little conclusion for you. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Blair to walk us through our analysis.
Thank you, Zach. Okay, so first we took a look at the Ministry of Agriculture, and we see that the strengths here, that you have the latest standards in animal care, so that's great. Along with that, you utilize the latest agriculture technology. And this is something that consumers and Canadians are not fully aware of just yet, but with the marketing plan that we provide with you today, we have the utmost confidence that they will. Looking at another area to focus on, some weakness, is you identified attracting more of the qualified employees for the agriculture industry. As it is growing in Saskatchewan, this is something that will need some focus on. So looking at the industry, we looked at the Canadian agriculture industry as a whole and noted that Canadians, we are the industry leaders. So it is rapidly growing, employing with 2.2 million people. In particular, the Canadian beef industry, this is Saskatchewan is the second largest provider beside Alberta with the 40%, Saskatchewan roughly around 30%. 6th largest producer of the beef worldwide. And an important note is that it's a key essential part of the prairie's economy. So looking forward we really want to attract and let consumers know that the agriculture area is really prospering in Canada. Another industry that we wanted to look at was the national fast food chains in Canada. So as noted, A&W has that campaign, Better Beef, and this is with beef without added hormones or steroids, and this is something that consumers are really grabbing onto, and they're seeing this as that it's a better beef, which in case is not. Again, Chipotle, they have the food with integrity. That's looking at more so just placing beef as, with the word regulation that they're using. There's no regulation, so what they're saying is they use more responsible. Used to say naturally, but again, there's no regulation for this, so consumers aren't aware of what actually is better or what's what. So with the marketing plan that we're going to provide for you today, we're going to hopefully clarify some of this for consumers. So some trends. The top concern, again, that we've noticed here is keeping healthy food affordable. Along with that, there's 85% of Canadians feel that food produced in Canada is of excellent quality. 86% seek locally produced items to support the local economy, which is great for us. Growing demand for hormone and antibiotic-free meat. So there is that misconception, and we will have to deal with that. And again, many consumers are unaware of the innovation of agriculture within Saskatchewan. So looking at our decision criteria, beef, we want to really avoid that backlash that we may see with consumers or, again, the restaurant industry. We don't want to upset too many people moving forward. We want to really make sure that it engages the target market. Like you said, the 18 to 30-year-olds, we really want to make sure it's engaging for them and that they'll be listening to us. And again, educating the Canadians of all the technology and kind of the hormones, hormone-free, like all those words that are getting thrown at them and that they're listening to. We want to make sure that they're educated and know what's right. And then again, for funds, we want to make sure they're allocated effectively or efficiently. So moving forward with that, the first alternative we have here is an informational alternative. So this is providing statistics and information to consumers of Canada about the agriculture industry, or agriculture in the prairies. So with that, we kind of looked at this as similar to the Alberta one, how it has a lot of information. With that, some pros, it really corrects the misconceptions. And it also translates well into low-cost media channels. So again, we can use the print, magazines, online. It will be very print-heavy. Some cons, it doesn't really have that really enticing, engaging for the 18 to 30-year-olds. We want to kind of have a better plan for that. So alternative 2, this is confrontational. We want to educate the Canadian consumers by directly confronting these misconceptions that some of the restaurants in the industry are saying about their beef. So again, educating consumers and really engaging the target audience by providing some controversy of what's right. Some cons, we could get some backlash from the industry and just kind of see, it's like who said what's actually right. So there's alternative 2. For alternative 3, the personal connections, this one's what Zach mentioned at the very beginning of our presentation, and this is reaching Canadians by connecting with them on a personal level. So we'll be providing them information about the agriculture industry, and it will be engaging for this target audience of 18 to 30-year-olds. This will also be educating them about the employment opportunities. Mitch will dive into that deeper through implementation. And then some cons here that we noticed, it will require more resources as we will be wanting more visual aids such as video and more engaging online activity. So looking at our decision matrix here today, on the top bar here we have the 3 alternatives that I've just mentioned, and then here on the side are beef decision criteria. So with informational, we show that for backlash, it's definitely a 3, as it won't be too confrontational with the restaurant industry, as we're just stating simple facts and statistics. Along with engagement, we found that print media isn't going to be that engaging with the 18 to 30-year-olds target segment. It will be educational, although for fund allocation we give it a 2 as we feel like those funds can be allocated better. For confrontational, we found backlash is a 1 as for avoiding backlash, as this confrontational option would definitely spike more risk in that area. Along with engagement as a 2, as we find that it is a little bit more engaging, but it won't be top-notch as in our personal recommendation. And then educational, yes, and fund allocation, we still feel that the funds will be better allocated in our 3rd option, which gives us a total of 12 for the decision matrix. So following that, I will pass it on to Mitch, who will cover implementation.
All right, thanks, Blair. So what I'd like to do for you today is, since you did want a vision for what these ads would look like, I would like to talk to you about what we call the Meet Today's Farmers campaign. And the way we're going to start this is by meeting Steve. So Steve, he's a Canadian farmer. He's been farming just outside of Regina since his family immigrated here from Czechoslovakia in 1936. He uses lots of modern agricultural techniques to make sure his crops are the healthiest, but also the most environmentally friendly as possible to benefit the end consumer. At the end of this ad, Steve speaks and says, "Hi, I'm Steve, and I'm one of today's farmers." I'd also like to introduce you to Carol. Carol is 32 years old. She's a scientist working with the Ministry of Agriculture, just doing research, making sure that all the food that gets to your family's plate is healthy no matter what hormones or antibiotics go into your meat. She knows that this is healthy for your family because she serves it to her family. We have her saying, "Hi, I'm Carol, and I'm one of today's farmers." Next, and finally, we have Taylor. Taylor is an accountant working for the Ministry of Agriculture. She's 42 years old, and she crunches the numbers and knows that buying Saskatchewan beef is both healthy, cost-effective for the consumer, as well as good for the Saskatchewan economy. Hi, I'm Taylor, and I'm one of today's farmers. So we want to quickly touch in again after that about who our target market is, just to give a little clearer of an idea. As you mentioned, you're looking to target the 18 to 30-year-old Saskatchewan residents, but we would see these people as probably being the more nutritional and environmentally conscious. They are wanting to make sure that their food is healthy, that these additives and hormones aren't going to be bad for them, as well as they'd be concerned about environmental issues. We also see them as being more tech-savvy and social media users, which we'll definitely be covering on in our implementation, because we think this is one of the best ways we can reach these and really make a connection with these consumers. And finally, we see these as people who have Canadian pride, and they want to stand up for that of their country. So first, I'd like to touch on our media channels that we've chosen. We do know that you're looking for a very cost-effective solution here, and we believe the best way that we can engage with these consumers, making connection with them, as well as effectively reaching them with our costs, are through 2 primary channels. The first is through radio. We'd want to use country, pop music, as well as modern rock music channels. These would have a high rate of engagement with our target market, more likely to tune into these sort of channels than other ones. We also want to have a heavy focus on our online marketing campaign. This is going to take several forms. For one, that video advertisement that I previously mentioned. It would show images of these people living their lives while that narrator talks about them. These would be uploaded to social media on our Facebook accounts as well as other social media channels. We'll be using pay-per-click to drive more views up in there, as well as we want to get these posted in the Facebook feeds. And we think this is a great way to target our audience, as through Facebook ads, you can reach those 18 to 30-year-old Saskatchewan residents, really make sure you're hitting only your demographic, not getting any extra people with the funds you're spending there. And finally, just make it a little more engaging as well. On these social media accounts, specifically the Facebook, we'd like to have quizzes that about what do you know about hormones, antibiotics, various agriculture technologies, and really engage the audience that way. And we're going to be using the hashtag #Today'sFarmers to really get a lot of buzz going around that, as well as having an @Today'sFarmer Twitter account where people can be posting on that more statistics and facts, something a little more engaging, getting updates on Steve, Carol, and Taylor and their lives as well, really making a connection using these technologies. For our timeline, we would start right away. We want to begin production of these videos as well as the radio ads. We want to make sure we're hiring voice actors for these, as well as recruiting the meat team. We do want these to be real people. We don't want this to be, there's a lot of cynicalism that has been growing in the younger demographics. We want to make sure that they know these are real people who do stand by these statements. We want to hire a social media professional. They'll be managing our social media accounts as well as developing the quizzes that we want to be engaging our audience with. At this point, we're also going to be developing a consumer attitude survey, one focused more primarily around Saskatchewan. We're going to be using this to evaluate how effective our marketing plan has been, as well as hire web developers to create a web page on the Ministry of Agriculture website. Lots of our other sources can link to this, where people can get a lot more in-depth information about all these new agricultural technologies, as well as employment opportunities. In the first 1 to 3 months, we do want to perform that first consumer attitude survey. This is going to allow us to have a comparison later on. We want to start broadcasting those radio advertisements as well as posting on our social media accounts. Again, this would include the video, sharing information, statistics again, really fun infographics, stuff that people can easily share with their friends and family, as well as posting those quizzes, and launching the Today's Farmers webpage as well. Following that, we want to keep maintaining this social media effort, really wanting, like I said, engage with the community, make a real strong connection between both these people, these Today's Farmers, and the 18 to 30-year-old target markets, as well as continue posting those quizzes and sort of updates on our whole Meets Today's Farmers team. And sort of use at Today's Farmers as well to showcase different opportunities. We've introduced you to Taylor, Carol, and Steve. We think there are so many more great people in the agriculture industry that people could be introduced to, which is also informing them about the opportunities they have for employment beyond just being a farmer. And again, we are continuing the radio ads, going on 1 month on, 1 month off, again, for cost effectiveness as well as making sure that we're not overloading the consumer there. Finally, we're continuing our social media activity to conclude, as well as performing the final consumer attitude survey to compare the results, see how much progress we've made. At this point, we'll be evaluating those to really find out where we want to go from here and what we can do. With that, I'd like to hand you over to Zach to talk about our budgets.
Thank you, Mitch. So now down to the nitty-gritty. Now you had allocated, or you had assigned us a budget of between $250,000 to $500,000. We felt that that was very significant and well within our reaches for what we wanted to target and what we wanted to accomplish. And so as you see here, we have allocated the following resources. To radio, roughly $11,000 towards the production of the ad, voice actors, and booth time. You look more substantially, our money is going towards the online marketing campaign. So the production of the video, we want to make sure that we are getting the best quality video we can. And at $150,000, we feel that this is a very reasonable number. It's going to allow us to attain a very professional-looking video that can engage our audience and ensure that they are, in fact, affected by the educational information. Next, you'll see that we do have pay-per-click accounted for, social media targeting, the cost of a marketing professional who's going to go out working with these social media accounts, but also developing those surveys so that we are able to gather the information that we find necessary to measure our success in the future. And lastly, we have an additional cost allocated to the public opinion survey. Now that marketing professional is going to create the survey, but we will require additional costs to actually conduct that survey and also gather the information and evaluate. So in total, the total cost of our marketing campaign is going to be $317,790. Now, in order to measure the success of our campaign, we looked at a number of key components. First, to measure social media engagement, there are a number of tools through these platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube that actually allow us to utilize them at no cost whatsoever. So you want to look at the video views, particularly at those in our target segment. So YouTube does allow you to look at where the views are coming from and also the age attached to the profile viewing it, which is perfect for what we want to look at. It allows us to clearly define which members of our segment are watching the video. Next, we want to attain 5,000 to 10,000 likes / follows on our social media platforms. So 5,000 to 10,000 per each platform. Next, we do want to see a 5% increase in consumer confidence in the safety of the product. So right now, it's about roughly 55%. While this is fairly substantial, we would like to see that up a little bit more within 1 year and see even further growth down the road. And lastly, employment was something that we wanted to address. So you do want to see an increase in the number of applicants that are coming into the agricultural sector. So approximately 2% increase we deem as feasible and very substantial as well. Now, with every marketing campaign, there comes some risks. So you want to make sure that we, one, address them, but two, also make sure that we do have a contingency plan to fall back on in case these risks, so that these risks do not stop us in our tracks. First, if there are low levels of online engagement. Now, engagement was one of our main components of the decision criteria, so we want to make sure that engagement is going to be there. What we want to consider doing is going for more paid ads, but also using additional forms of media such as television if necessary. Next, we want to look at the feedback from our first survey to identify which key characters are more important, and if necessary, we can adjust our feed or adjust our campaign to reflect those new opinions. Now, in conclusion, we've provided you with a marketing campaign that's going to allow you to communicate to the Canadian public on a very personal level, a level that most of us feel most attached to. So you want to make sure that we do, in fact, utilize our information media platforms to let them know just how important innovation and technology in the agriculture sector is to ensuring that our lifestyles are sustainable and to ensure that we can feed everyone in Canada as effectively as possible. Now, I'd like to thank you again for being with us today. We'll now open up the floor to any questions you may have regarding our recommendation.
So you talked about your three characters there, Steve, Carol, and Taylor, and then you identified after that your target market was the 18 to 30-year-olds. Yet you had those three characters all outside of that target market sector. So what makes you think your target market is going to create that personal connection with those three characters?
Well, first, our target market between 18 and 30-year-old, they will respect the authority figures. So these people are, in fact, a little bit older. So having someone who has experience in the industry to come down and testify their own testimonials regarding the product, its effectiveness, its health features, is going to allow some sort of reliability and legitimacy to the claims. And also, we recognize that these 18 and 30-year-olds are looking for employment opportunities with a future. So seeing people that are older and have been in the industry for a while, have had success in the industry, are going to be able to see the substantialness of the industry and its longevity to it as well.
You seem to, your campaign is driven largely by government, and you have government as almost a primary spokesperson. Some of your people work for the Ministry of Agriculture. Why do you think government is the right spokesperson for this campaign, and how would you go about giving the campaign traction to the larger industry?
Well, I think that a primary reason we did focus so much on the Ministry of Agriculture and the government is because they do speak from a place of authority. People do trust them more than they would just some average scientist or accountant, someone who actually works in that field, has experience. That does bring a level of authority to it. As for expanding it to the larger industry, I think the format that we've laid out for this marketing plan, while it works in Saskatchewan, could be applicable to Canada as a whole and could definitely spread on a much larger basis.
You targeted 3 cities for the radio campaign. Just wondering why 3, why not 1, why not 7? Which 3 cities?
Okay, so we started off with just the 3, and we wanted to make it more Saskatchewan-based, so we wanted to choose 3 large cities within Saskatchewan, Saskatoon, Regina, maybe Lloyd or PA, and really just see how it went from there and maybe just expand for future.
So how will we make the choice between Lloyd and PA?
We can look at the degree of the number of people in our consumer target that reside in each city as a main factor for deciding which of the 2 we would go with.
I was intrigued by the fact that you went with radio with this audience. What was the rationale that you used to use that medium versus some of the others?
Well, I think a big thing about radio is that people have thought for a long time that radio is going to die any day now with the internet and all that. But I think really the industry has shown quite the opposite. People are still in their cars every day listening. Channels like 95.1, other pop music stations wouldn't exist.
Is this target audience that too?
Yeah, I think our target audience would be listening to those channels primarily more than other stations, but those ones that do have the popular music would definitely be popular with the younger demographic. They also have a much more sense of building a community with being local to that particular area. And as for why we didn't choose other methods, they seemed the most cost-effective for the engagement we're getting with radio and with the online platforms. Things like television would be far too expensive for the budget we're shooting for, whereas print advertisement couldn't get that balance of engagement and education like these platforms could.
I 100% agree with you that government has more credibility than now, how do you reflect that credibility in that $150,000 video that you're planning? What kind of contents do you see in that video?
Well, I think there's...
Is it even going to reflect that credibility?
I think it's balancing both the credibility of someone with authority in government as well as a much more personal level of someone you've gotten to know and can trust. On the government side, when talking about Carol, we definitely see her working in her lab, working with the different animals and stuff like that. Whereas someone, for example, the accountant, we'd see them working in their office as well. But on the personal level, when Carol is coming to feed her family, we'd see her serving them the meat that she's supporting. So on both levels, it's credibility.
With someone, let's say, from Canadian District Agency or someone from scientific area.
So if you repeat that, just the last
In
part.
the video, include someone from the scientist, the research, or the medical doctor,
Right.
someone who is helped remove these misconceptions.
Right. Well, we actually did absolutely intend to use a scientist from the Ministry of Agriculture who did have the accreditations and the authority to make these claims. So we do, in fact, plan to do that in our video.